Congratulations! If you are watching this video, it means that you either just cleared your 5-year MOP or you know that you have to plan forward because you have the opportunity to upgrade from your current place. So today, I'm here to share with you a few common mistakes that people make while upgrading, and hopefully you can avoid them and ultimately choose the best possible option moving forward. So here are some of the common mistakes. Number one, overlooking of financial planning. Number two, the timing between your selling and buying. Number three, skipping your due diligence when checking for your new property. And number four, most importantly, you do not want to overlook any potential interest rates risk. Anyway, if you think that this video can help your friends or family who are considering whether to upgrade from the HDB, please like and share this video with them. Okay, so mistake number one, firstly, will be overlooking financial planning. So many of the upgraders assume that the sale of their HDB flat will cover most of the cost to their new property. But in reality, there are some extra expenses that you need to calculate, and I'm going to list down some for you. Number one, additional renovation fee, your moving fee, potentially any ABSD that you might incur, legal fee, and additional cash for stamp duty. But for this case, it's very unique. I'll explain later. So now I'm going to share with you a few more factors to consider while doing your upgrading. So over here, I created a table for you. Firstly, let's talk about private resale. So for private resale, you will need to have 5% cash on hand, 20% cash or CPF. For buyer stamp duty, you will need to take note, especially for private resale. Your buyer stamp duty needs to be paid in cash first. And then for this cash portion, you'll be reimbursed by CPF on or after completion. For private resale, you do not have to pay any resale levy, legal fee of course, and valuation fee plus minus, estimate about $415. And then for property tax, you will need to prorate to the seller that paid it for the year. So next will be your private new launch, which is your BUC, building under construction. As usual, 5% cash needs to be on hand. And then for your 20% down payment, it'll be split into 15% and 5%. Okay, so for this, I will not elaborate further. If you want to find out more, you can PM me. And then for your buyer stamp duty, it can be paid in CPF, but if you do not have enough in your OA, you can use cash. No resale levy as well. You need to pay legal fee, valuation fee, but no property tax is needed. Next will be your brand new EC, your executive condominium. Same thing, 5% cash needs to be on hand. For your 20% cash and CPF, same thing, you'll be split into 15% and 5%. And then for your buyer stamp duty, can be paid in both CPF and cash. And for your resale levy, if you have enjoyed any subsidy beforehand, especially if you bought a BTO, you will incur resale levy. So here's a breakdown of resale levy. So as per usual, legal fee, valuation fee needs to be paid for brand new EC as well, but the only thing that you do not pay while it's building is the property tax. So here's an overview of the additional cash or CPF portion that you need to come up with. And with this, I hope it can help you better plan any additional cash or CPF that you need to prepare. So in summary, do create a detailed financial plan. Factor every single cost possible in your transaction, because the last thing you want is to sell your property, and then when you go to buy a house next, you realize that, hey, I actually have to stretch or come up with extra money to complete this purchase, and this will definitely affect the whole process of your buying. Mistake number two, misjudging the timeline between your selling and buying. So for this pointer, I'll cover mostly in the resale segment of private property. Why? Is because usually when you buy a private resale, it's more for your own stay. So the last thing you want is there's any lapse or lack of transition timing from your selling to buying. So all this timeline over here is to help you transit smoothly from your HDB to your next house. So before that, let me give you a few crucial timeline and factors to take note. Number one, HDB completion date. So we need to understand that the only date that's missing throughout all your selling and purchase is always the completion date. You can have your option date, your exercise date, but your HDB completion date will only come out after HDB approve your case. So this will leave an uncertainty on when your cash proceeds will come out and when your CPF proceeds will come in to complete your next purchase. So how do you make sure that this does not affect your purchase completion? So when you're buying a private resale property, make sure to include this clause in the OTP saying that the private resale completion is to delay 3 to 4 weeks after the release of official HDB date. So with this clause being input in your OTP, the seller will have to agree, and also the seller will have to accommodate when the HDB completion date is out. So that will actually ensure that your CPF and your sales proceed will come in time to complete your purchase. For this 3 to 4 weeks delay is only for sellers that do not want to engage a bridging loan when it comes to borrowing of sales proceed to complete your case. So if you are taking a bridging loan, you do not need to do this. You just need to make sure that your timeline allows you to bridge your funds from a sale to your purchase accordingly. So for bridging loan, if you'd like to find out more, do slide into my DM and I'll do my best to explain to you. Next will be your HDB 3-month extension. One of the biggest mistakes that both agents and seller will face is actually they mutually agree on the 3 months extension. So I just want to advise everybody out there that please do not go into agreement just based on trust or based on just verbal or WhatsApp agreement, because ultimately, without black and white or approval from HDB, everything does not count. So what do you need to take note on this case? HDB will only approve your 3 months extension if you have a valid or exercised OTP for your next purchase. So meaning that if today you are buying a private BUC that is not completed, you will not be granted the 3 months extension. So do take note, if you are a seller that is selling your property before buying and you have not found anything in between the process of your selling, you might not be granted your 3 months extension and buyer can back out from the agreement. So lastly, do factor in any delay in terms of your renovation or any of your work that's going to be done to your place, because sometimes there's a lack of manpower during festive season like Chinese New Year. Now I'm going to give you 2 options and 2 timelines if you are a seller that is planning to sell your HDB to buy a private resale. Option 1. Sell HDB first, buy private later. This is recommended for HDB houses that are harder to move in the resale market, and also to ensure that your sale will be exercised before you exercise your private purchase. This is to avoid any ABSD to be paid. This is also for people who have a wider budget, you have more options in the private market, meaning that you have less requirements when it comes to buying. And this timeline is also suitable for people who have no rush to purchase a unit and have a replacement home to stay if they can't find anything. For this timeline, you can actually play with the submission period. So you can request for a longer submission period for your HDB sale to purchase your unit. So usual submission period is between 7 to 14 days after the OTP exercise date. So you can request up to 90 days. So the reason for 90 days is because any longer, it will actually affect your buyer valuation report. So because when your buyer buy your unit, they will need to apply for valuation, and the valuation report is needed for them to utilize their CPF. And this report is usually valid for only 3 months. Option 2. Buy private first and sell HDB later. So the biggest question here is, you can buy a private first without paying ABSD, meh? So the answer is yes, you can. But you need your HDB sale to be exercised before your private purchase exercise date. Okay, so for this timeline, who is it suitable for? Firstly, it's recommended for HDB houses that are high in demand and easier to move, which is easier to sell. And number 2, for sellers that are more realistic in terms of pricing and are ready to sell when a genuine offer is given. So for people who has limited options by budget or rarity of the type of condo, or has small requirements to fulfill. So for those HDB upgraders who are very particular for their next house, this timeline will suit you. So number 4, for people who prefer to have a back-to-back timeline to avoid downtime in between as much as possible. So timeline that you can play with to facilitate this. So number 1 is actually to request a longer option period for your private purchase. So for this, the usual practice is 14 days for option period, but you can also request for 2 months or 3 months. But of course, there's a trade-off. The seller might request a higher option fee instead of the normal 1%. How do you prepare for this? So for example, some sellers will calculate, if you ask for 2 months option period, they might collect 2% option fee from you. If you request 3 months, they might collect 3% option fee from you. So it really depends on your agreement between you and your seller. Also, to include a clause to shift the private purchase completion date to at least 3 weeks after HDB official completion if you are not taking a bridging loan. This will ensure that you can transit smoothly and you have enough time to renovate and move into your next house. So in summary, by managing your timeline, you can avoid some costly mistakes over here. Number 1 will be the ABSD that you might incur. In order to avoid paying unnecessary ABSD, make sure that your private purchase exercise date is after your HDB sales exercise date. And for timeline wise, we need to make sure to factor in transition and renovation downtime and always prepare for a backup plan. And next, in terms of extension, in order for HDB to approve your extension, you will need an exercise OTP for your next purchase. So let's say if this is too much for you to handle and you think that there's so many things to take note of, do engage a professional or a real estate agent to help you manage this. Mistake number 3, skipping due diligence for new property. So what do we mean by skipping due diligence? Basically, some of the upgraders are so excited to upgrade and they forgot that there are some things to take note when choosing the next property. So here's a checklist for you. Usually for HDB upgraders, we'll try our best to have this S.M.A.R.T.O checklist in place. So what does S.M.A.R.T.O means? Firstly, S stands for schools, M stands for mall and amenities, A stands for accessibility, R stands for rentability, T stands for any transformation that's going to happen, and O stands for others. I think for S.M.A.R.T is pretty straightforward. It's basically for future exit, you need to sell to people that are probably buying the place for the school or people who are looking for something near the mall, etc. So now I'm going to include some of the other factors that you need to consider. So number 1, it will be your development size. Number 2, the layout and floor plan within your development. Number 3 and 4 will be your entry price and entry timing. And the last one is the most important one to me, which is your holding period, which is your time. So if you were to watch my last video in terms of when is the best time to sell my executive condominium, I also mentioned this as well as one of the most important factor, time. So for HDB upgraders, my priority is always planning your time, or what I call a property roadmap, so that you can plan or put yourself into a roadmap and see that by this age, what am I going to do? And today at this age, what is my priority? And probably 10, 20 years later, what is my end goal as well? Now we need to understand what is the time for different upgrading options. So number 1, for private resale and private new launch is subjected to seller stamp duty, which is a 3 years holding period. But this doesn't mean that you cannot sell within 3 years. Basically, if you were to buy today and sell tomorrow, you will be incurred a 12% seller stamp duty based on your selling price. Within your second year will be 8%, within your third year will be 4%, and third year onwards will be 0% seller stamp duty. And that's why usually people hold till the fourth year onwards to sell, so that there will be 0% of seller stamp duty incurred. For brand new EC, is very different. So for example, if you were to buy an EC today, your holding period does not start right now. The 5-year MOP period only starts after key collection. So meaning today, if you were to buy an EC, you have to wait for, let's say, 3 to 4 years for it to complete, and then upon key collection, you have to add another 5 more years, and that's the time when you can exit from the property. Let me give you an example. If today you are 35 years old, you have to buy a private resale property, you can sell and move to your next property at 38 years old. Same for your private new launch. But do take note, for private new launch, the construction period is also counted in the 3-year seller stamp duty. So that's the reason why there are some units that are sold before the key collection of these brand new launches. Next, if you're getting a brand new EC, if you're 35 years old this year, you buy an EC today, the construction period might be 3 to 4 years, let's say 3 years, then plus another 5 years MOP period. By the time you can sell, you will be 43 years old. So what is the difference for you? So if you are someone who foresee a shift in location, a career within the next 5 years, going for a brand new EC might not be something that is suitable for you, because you'll be stuck with this property for the next 8 to 9 years. Number 2, everybody is allowed a 30 years loan tenure up to 65 years old. So at the point of exit, your loan eligibility taking the EC route will actually be affected. So for example, for the same property price, a 43-year-old and a 38-year-old will have different installment amount due to the loan tenure difference. Of course, the one with lesser loan tenure will have to pay more. So even before we go into S.M.A.R.T.O analysis, most importantly, you need to know that what you want for the next 5 to 10 years, because that really determines what you're going to upgrade to. And usually we sit down, we plan up to 65 years old, because from there we will know how much you will need at the end of your roadmap to retire in, how much of asset you want to accumulate through real estate. So with this planning, we can actually plan backwards based on your end goal instead of just taking one step at a time. Last but not least, this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make, which is overlooking the interest rates risk. So as we know right now, the interest rate is dropping. Okay, now we are about 2.45, 2.5. So many people are thinking to upgrade from their current property to lock in the interest rate. But please take note that these interest rates are usually locked into either 1 or 2 years. So my question will be, what if one day interest rate were to raise to 4% again, and you are still within your holding period and you can't sell without any extra tax incurred? So imagine today you were to upgrade and you were to fully utilize all your cash and CPF, and your monthly installment actually comes up from your cash savings. This is something that you need to be very mindful. Always prepare for the worst case scenario when interest rate were to rise and you can't sell the property, and the only thing you can do is to fork out your savings to pay for installment. I think if this were to happen, it's not going to be easy for you and your family to pull through that period. But please don't worry, I'm not trying to scare you guys and asking you not to upgrade, but most importantly, plan carefully, always be prudent, make sure that your next choice is always one of the safest options out there, and most importantly, if you have any potential to make additional profit, of course, it's the best. So for this scenario, usually what I'll do is I'll ask you, okay, let's say if I were to buy this property and let's say I plan to stay for the next 5 to 8 years. So what we can do is actually we can simulate a few scenarios. Example, at this property price, outstanding loan, what if interest rate were to go up again to 3.5%? Is this something manageable? Or is it possible that today when we buy this property, we can set aside a sum of money just in case when the interest rate were to rise for any reason, at least we have this money as backup plan to pay for the difference in terms of the interest. So forward planning is very important for HDB upgraders. Alright, there you have it. Here are the few common mistakes that most HDB upgraders fall into. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that for the past 10 to 15 minutes, I've helped you gain some clarity in terms of your upgrading. So if you like this video, please like and share, and most importantly, to subscribe to this channel. See you